I felt conflicted about Twilight Princess for a long time now. When it was released, it received critical acclaim from nearly every gaming news outlet. The general consensus was that this is what gamers wanted as the sequel to Ocarina of Time, and not the direction that The Wind Waker took. It was also my introduction to the Zelda franchise, and this was basically how it went. Yeah, seeing that as a 6-year-old kinda scarred me, and I didn't touch the series until I played Wind Waker years later. After falling in love with The Wind Waker, I felt it was time to give Twilight Princess another shot. I was able to enjoy it with a fresh set of eyes, but there was always something that made me uncomfortable. Now with the experience of the prior 3D installments, I'm able to see Twilight Princess in a new light. Twilight Princess feels like it was made for fans of the N64 entries, as it sets a dark and serious tone while harkening back to the prior 3D entries. It leaves me torn. It has some of the best highs in the series, yet some of the most painful lows at the same time. The dungeons are some of the best in the franchise, the music is fantastic, and the story is filled with epic moments. Yet it also has some odd pacing decisions, questionable design choices, and set pieces that drive me up the wall. I'm aware that some of what I'm about to say can be considered nitpicky, but it comes from a place of belief that this game could have been more. This is why I believe that Twilight Princess is a conflicting successor. Our story begins with this incarnation of Link reflecting by a spring with his mentor Russell. Link is assigned with the task of acting as the village representative to present a gift to the Hyrulean royal family. Finishing up his goat wrangling job at the ranch with his horse Epona, Link gets ready for his trip by getting refamiliarized with his weapons. On the day of departure, the mayor's daughter Ilia accuses Link of mistreating Epona. She takes Epona to the local spring to treat her, where Link and Ilia reconcile, only for everything to go terribly wrong. With no sign of his friends or his horse, Link runs off to where the intruders ran in from, only to see a foreboding black wall. He gets pulled in by a dark creature and enters a malformed and chaotic new world, where he's forced into a transformation. Our furry friend finds himself chained up in a prison cell, with an odd-looking spectator on the outside. The imp named Midna breaks Link free of his constraints and tells him that she'll break him out, under the condition that he obeys her every order. The pair reach a tower where inside is none other than Princess Zelda. She explains what brought about the change over the land of Hyrule, calling it a Shroud of Twilight. It was brought upon by Zant, the king of the Twilight Realm. Leaving her with the choice of surrendering and letting her subjects live or killing them all, Zelda conceded and let Zant plunge the land into Twilight. Returning outside after the chat, Midna offers her services once again so that Link can find and rescue his lost friends. From there, it becomes a partnership of Link searching for the rest of the village kids, and Midna leading him to the next steps on their journey. I really enjoy the story of Twilight Princess. It's an epic tale filled with intense encounters, heartfelt moments, and insane lore drops. However, the faults come from the pacing. The beginning in Ordon Village and the imprisonment in Hyrule Castle takes about an hour and a half, with everything that is needed to get to that point including cutscenes. A slow opening can be excused, but between every dungeon is a sizable chunk of gameplay that can take a few more hours to get through. Most of the in-between sections are fine, but they add up and tend to overstay their welcome. This is easily one of the longest Zelda games in terms of length, and it's for both good and bad reasons. Despite the pacing, it still has incredible set pieces that have a cinematic feeling to them. This makes a lot of sense considering a certain trilogy of fantasy movies were very popular around the early to mid 2000s. It's no secret that Twilight Princess was heavily catered to Western audiences, and the inspiration from the Lord of the Rings movies isn't subtle. Yet it also has some showdowns that wouldn't be out of place for a spaghetti western. All of this is to say that Twilight Princess's story is stacked with intense action and grand standoffs, yet is not afraid to tell an even darker tale than Majora's Mask. This incarnation of Link is definitely the most hands-on one out of all of them thus far. When there's a problem in the way, he takes care of it with his bare hands. When he needs to climb Death Mountain then sumo wrestle with a Goron, he takes that head on. He's definitely the most badass iteration we've seen so far. I know he has the Triforce of Courage, look at his hand, it's right there, but the balls on this man are huge. He'll charge head first into a horseback duel on a bridge to save his friend, then strike a pose like the hero he is. He'll walk into an abandoned town filled with monsters and treat it like a western shootout, like come on! His feats of heroism inspire those around him, especially the village kids. Link's unwavering nature as a paragon of courage motivates everyone that he meets to be the best selves they can be. Case in point, Midna. Midna is the best companion the series has had yet, and it's not close. In comparison to Na'vi, Tattle, or the King of Red Lions, Midna has far more importance to not only Link, but the overall story. The introduction paints her as snarky and selfish, seeing Link as only a means to an end to stop Zant. Her vendetta against the King of Twilight stems from him placing a curse onto her and usurping the throne. But the journey with Link changes her. Seeing Link's acts of selflessness and kindness lightens up her attitude more. Her tune drastically changes after facing her own mortality, with her goal of defeating Zant growing from more than a grudge to an obligation to save not only her own race, but also the Realm of Light. Her relationships evolve due to this newfound level of responsibility. Her dynamic with Link changes from one of master and servant to that of proper partners, and seeing their friendship grow deeper between the two is great. After knocking on death's door, she's indebted to Zelda for saving her life, and knows that she must repay the favour to her. Midna's personal journey of growth is one of the best in the entire series, and her title as the best companion is deserved. The usurper King Zant admittedly comes up short as a villain on his own merits. He served the royal family in the Twilight Realm, scheming of ways to overthrow the Realm of Light. The subjects feared Zant's ambitions, so they chose instead for another to rule. Feeling betrayed by his own race, Zant looked to the sky for an answer, and so it came in the form of his god. From there, he overtook the throne and began his war on the Realm of Light. Zant as a villain doesn't really take part in most events, except for the few times where he makes his presence known. He's mostly just referred to by Midna for most of the story. Then it shifts to the mystery of who Zant's god is. I wish Zant could have had a bigger role as the story's main villain, and it's only until near the end of the game where he starts getting interesting, but he falls flat for the god who gave him everything. Who is his god? It's the King of Thieves, Ganondorf. With Twilight Princess taking place after Ocarina of Time, the Hero of Time went to the Hyrulean royal family as a child and warned them of Ganondorf's true ambitions. As such, he never invaded the Sacred Realm and instead was sentenced to execution by the sages for his treachery. However, due to a divine prank, he was granted the Triforce of Power and murdered one of the sages. With no other option, he was forced into the Realm of Twilight where he came across Zant. I'm completely fine with the choice to make Ganondorf the main villain, and it's because of the lore. He had never risen to power in this timeline, and the only reason that the divine prank happened was because of the Hero of Time. He went back in time still having the Triforce of Courage. The Hyrulean royal family always has the Triforce of Wisdom. Ganondorf was the missing piece of the puzzle. Personality-wise, Ganondorf doesn't have the same depth as his Wind Waker iteration due to not being as experienced as a ruler. He has his ruthless ambition to conquer Hyrule, but it's more surface level here. He's serviceable as a villain, but what makes me enjoy his involvement is his ties to the lore of the series. Twilight Princess still holds true to the formula that was laid out with Ocarina of Time, but still finds unique ways to differentiate itself. This is something that should be brought up now, but Twilight Princess has 3 main releases. The GameCube version was the original intended way to play the game, using a traditional controller with a free-moving camera. The Wii version uses a Wii Remote and Nunchuck and incorporates motion controls. To incorporate the motion controls, however, there was an issue. A majority of people are right-handed, and holding a Wii Remote in the left hand wouldn't be intuitive. So to compensate, they flipped the entire game world, so what's east on GameCube is west on Wii. Finally, there's the main version I'm using for this video, and it's the HD version released for the Wii U. It uses the GameCube version as the base with the additional features from the Wii version, which I'll touch upon when I can. If you've seen my other videos on the 3D Zelda games, you'll remember that I emphasized that they all focus on patience in combat, waiting for the right time to strike. The same still holds true for Twilight Princess, but the new tools and moves Link gets allow him to control the flow of battle. Link has access to returning items, but with their own unique twists to make them stand out. The Gale Boomerang is a versatile item as it can activate wind-based switches, but also bring items and smaller enemies straight to Link. It additionally allows for what speedrunners call long jump attacks, or LJAs. I very much doubt this is intentional, but goddamn if it isn't fun. Bombs have more utility now with the addition of water bombs and the bomb arrows. Water bombs are pretty self-explanatory, they blow stuff up underwater. Bomb arrows can blow up faraway objects and clear out a group of enemies, plus they hurt. Several brand new items were added that are admittedly a bit gimmicky. The Dominion Rod is a clear example of this. It's a neat item that allows Link to control inanimate objects, and it's really fun to use when puzzles are designed around it. However, it only really sees use in the dungeon it comes from and the following quest. Afterwards, little to no use at all, and that can be applied for a fair chunk of items in the game. It'd be nice if some of these items can have more utility to them outside of very niche instances, but that unfortunately isn't the case. Special attention was given to Link's skills with the sword. Link is able to learn hidden skills from the hero's shade, passing along his forgotten knowledge to the hero of Twilight. These skills are incredibly powerful attacks tuned for most situations. But the key thing about every single one of them is how they let Link take charge in the fight. I mentioned how prior 3D Zelda games put emphasis on striking at the right moment, but Link here can decide when that moment is himself. The finishing blow instantly kills a downed enemy, the backslice allows Link to strike at a foe's unguarded spots, and the mortal draw can instantly kill most regular enemies. It can also be a great way to carve up pork. The hidden skills allow Link to dictate how he wants to control a fight, and makes the combat of Twilight Princess more aggressive and engaging. As a Hylian, that is. Whenever Link gets dragged into the Twilight, he's forced into his wolf form. As a wolf, Link loses access to his weapons and items in exchange for speed and new abilities. The Sixth Sense can detect most things invisible to the naked eye, such as spirits, scents, and ghosts. Digging allows Link to access places usually not accessible, and uncover rupees by digging at dark patches of dirt. But at nearly all times, Link will have Midna on his back assisting with her magic. The Midna jump has her leading Link across treacherous gaps that are normally not traversable. The energy field has Midna spreading out a large circle that tags enemies, and once released, has Link attacking every target in quick succession. This is the strongest combat option Wolf Link gets, but it is not without its drawbacks. It must be used once Link has the attention from every enemy, since Link is vulnerable until he releases it. Outside of that, the Wolf combat is nothing more than jump attacks or the rare spin attack. Combat as Wolf Link is pretty dry compared to Hylian combat, and every fight boils down to using the energy field. It would be nice to see more of Minda's abilities as other attacks, but it's simply the way it is. Also, taking twice as much damage as Wolf Link compared to regular Link is just sad. Luckily, Wolf Link isn't the only four-legged animal, there's Epona. Since Hyrule isn't flooded like in the Wind Waker, horseback travel has returned, and with several quality of life upgrades. Link is able to use more than the bow this time, as he can use any one-handed item to better deal with enemies. This includes his sword, and it's nice having a close-ranged option instead of being limited to far-range weaponry. Finally, I want to touch on the additions to the HD version. There were new items added to this version, the most abundant of which are the Miiverse stamps. These could be used to make posts on Miiverse, which shut down over a year and a half after this port came out. These are honestly a pain to collect and now just feel redundant. Speaking of redundant, an item was added known as the Ghost Lantern. It lights up whenever a ghost or Poe is around. This thing is borderline worthless. The purpose of it immediately gets lost once a Poe is spotted, because by then the plan should be to swap to Wolf Link and kill the Poe. If it did something more useful such as changing the time of day like the Phantom Cigar in MGS5, then this item would see far more use. There's some issues with the controls as well. During combat, trying to do a shield bash can sometimes make Link do a jump attack for no discernible reason. In the other versions, Link's turn radius is wider and feels much more natural. Here though, his turn radius is way shorter and I'm not a fan. The camera loves to pan out a lot and feels awkward to use a lot of the time, to the point where I just flat out don't use it. Epona isn't perfect. She feels worse to control than in other versions, and horseback sections feel more frustrating now due to fighting the controls more. But there were some good additions, namely Hero Mode, the Amiibo functionality, and quick swapping. Hero Mode in Twilight Princess works the same as in The Wind Waker, as Link takes double damage with no heart drops, but with one key difference. The world is mirrored just like the Wii version. And as someone who grew up with the Wii version, this mode feels more familiar to me. I don't understand why the world being flipped had to be locked behind a harder difficulty, as I think the options should have just been available in an options menu. The game makes use of the Wii U gamepad, being able to swap between weapons by dragging the item across to an item slot. It also allows for instantaneous transformation between the Hylian and Wolf forms. This is the first 3D Zelda game to have Amiibo functionality, and they can offer some neat things. The Wolf Link Amiibo unlocks the Cave of Shadows, a challenge that puts Link through a 40-floor gauntlet as the Wolf transformation. By the end, the save data can be stored to the Amiibo figure, and be used in Breath of the Wild, but that will be touched upon when we come to it. Other than that, Link Amiibos can restore arrows, Zelda Amiibos can restore hearts, but Ganondorf Amiibos can add a multiplier for all incoming damage to Link. Combine that with Hero Mode, that can mean 4 times damage, and easily turns Twilight Princess into the hardest Zelda game. The gameplay of Twilight Princess is ultimately the formula at its peak. The combat is the most aggressive with Link's new sword skills, the items are easily at their most unique, and most returning systems are at their best. However, a lot of new items and mechanics that were introduced either feel half-baked or flat out become redundant after their relative dungeon. It would have been nice to see some of these concepts expanded upon further, but there's only so much that could have been done. The land of Hyrule is a vast kingdom, with diverse landscapes and races presiding in its provinces. Many races return from Ocarina of Time, such as the Proud Gorons and lake-residing Zoras, but there's also new races that reside in more remote locations. There's the mountainous Yetis, the shadow-dwelling Twilight, and this thing! I don't like this thing very much. For the most part, the only race that can normally be seen in most spots around Hyrule are the Hylians. You might see the occasional Goron selling hot spring water or a Zora Prince needing medical assistance, but the other races don't generally leave their provinces, and might I say, these provinces can be huge. In the deep south is Ordon, a small farming village with a close-knit community. It's a humble little place, far away from the hustle and bustle of city life. Beyond it is Faron, a decently sized forest that conceals many secrets within its branches. Hidden within is not only a temple inside a hollowed out tree, but also a grove protected by an old friend. Within Eldin lies the dangerous Death Mountain, a volcano where Gorons have created a mining facility with advanced technology. At the foot of the mountain is Kakariko Village, a small town that has been ravaged by monsters, but is held together by the perseverance of the villagers. Lanayru is a large region, with many interconnecting paths that lead to both Zora's Domain and Lake Hylia. Both of these areas are beautiful and serene, with some breathtaking views and good opportunities to have some fun. In the middle of the map is Hyrule Castle and its castle town. The castle itself is grand in every sense of the word, with beautiful architecture present all throughout, being adorned with murals and statues of armor. The castle town, in contrast, is more light-hearted, with kids playing in the narrow streets and plenty of shops to spend hard-earned rupees at. Playing the HD version, the game visually looks fine with better lighting and such, but the game definitely shows its age. What was acceptable back in 2006 looks dated by today's standards, and Twilight Princess's visuals haven't aged as gracefully as Wind Waker's. The developers went for a more mature look with the character designs, and they aren't bad. Hell, they'd look like they'd fit into the worlds of Berserk or Claymore. Link's design in this game is honestly one of my favourites. I love all the little details in his tunic. It makes me wonder how the whole game could have looked if they took more inspiration from not only the aforementioned manga, but the promotional art for the game as well. This artwork of Link fighting Dark Knights is so damn cool, and I wish we got an art style like this opposed to the straight realism that we have. Where the game lacks in visuals though, it more than makes up for in atmosphere. When the Twilight takes control in a province, the world changes in appearance and tone. The once blue sky changes to a hazy mix of oranges and yellows, black squares rising up from the ground with regular people being resigned to spiritual blue flames. Using Wolf Link's senses to see and hear the emotional distress that the spirits are going through hammers in how bad the conditions are when the Twilight cloaks everything in shadow. The Shadow Invasion brings only death and suffering for those in the light. Xanth's minions and their horns blaring are the harbingers of all that is to follow. The consequences of their warpath can be found in nearly every corner of Hyrule, especially within the dungeons. The dungeon design within Twilight Princess is some of the best in the series, with notable examples being Snow Peak Ruins, Lakebed Temple, and my personal favourite, the Arbiter's Grounds. The Arbiter's Grounds has everything that I love in a dungeon: engaging encounters, creative mechanics, and ties to the lore. Deep within the Gerudo Desert, the grounds served as a temporary holding place for the most heinous criminals in Hyrule while they awaited trial. This is where Ganondorf's botched execution was carried out by the sages, with it ultimately leading to his banishment into the Twilight Realm. The Arbiter's Grounds calls back to two dungeons from Ocarina of Time, the first of which is the Spirit Temple. Both take place deep in the Gerudo Desert and have strong spiritual connections. Nabooru used the Spirit Temple as her HQ and became the Sage of Spirit, whereas the sages used the Arbiter's Grounds to carry out sentences on criminals. The second dungeon is the Forest Temple, and it's for two main reasons. Both are the first dungeon to be tackled after the Master Sword has been obtained, and make good use of the expanded tools provided. The second is actually the core mechanic, chasing Poes. In both games, ghostly apparitions known as Poes take the flames needed to allow access to the second halves of each dungeon. In Ocarina of Time, they're hunted down by solving puzzles and changing the dimensions of the temple. In Twilight Princess, they're hunted down by tracking their sensor's wolf link and breaking their lanterns. The Arbiter's Grounds is the first dungeon to make good use of the ability to swap between the Hylian and Wolf transformations, as they each have their own value. Hylian Link is more adept in combating the undead soldiers and has access to his equipment, while Wolf Link is able to take on the supernatural ghosts that occupy the dungeon. This is where Link acquires the Spinner, a rather niche item that allows him to ride along railings, but gains serious momentum pretty fast. The Spinner also gets great use against the main boss, Star-Lord. The atmosphere within the dungeon is incredible. The lighting, visuals, sound design and music combine to give off the air of an abandoned prison. The various enemies such as Gibdos, Stalfos and Ghoul Rats add to that atmosphere, implying that these are prisoners left behind that never truly got their proper ruling. The music is this slow drum beat with occasional hums and high-pitched noises that create this unnerving feeling. Every aspect of the Arbiter's Grounds comes together to form one of the best designed dungeons in the game, and honestly the entire series. Going back to the music for a moment, Twilight Princess's OST is outstanding. A large majority of the tracks feel very grand and epic, which was the intention by the composers. I don't think any track in the game better portrays this than the theme for Hyrule Field. Riding around on Epona with this track playing in the background adds to the feel of adventure and makes traversing much more grand. Boss themes have this sense of scale to them. Take Pyrus for example, a gigantic monster that ignites itself and can only be taken down by using its own weight against it. For more somber moments in the journey, there are tracks that invoke dire tones such as Midna's Lament. With Midna knocking on death's door and Link stuck as a wolf, they are both very much powerless. Both are in a race against time, and this track helps build that sense of desperation. There's moments in the game where Link can howl at special stones, and for veterans of the series, you'll more than likely know these tunes. Special direction was given to the sound effects and voice direction. The bow sounds powerful enough to pierce through an enemy. The activation sound from the Dominion Rod feels like booting up a piece of alien technology. And the sounds of chains from the claw shot as well as the ball and chain have that sound of metal colliding with each other to work as a proper mechanism. Link's voice direction when in a fight is honestly my favourite of any incarnation. He has real oomph to his attacks, and his yells just intensify how much power he puts into his strikes. Listen to this man as he performs the finishing blow. His sword strikes feel really satisfying to land, with just the right amount of hit stop on a successful hit. The world, art, and sound design in Twilight Princess are all top notch, with every component coming together to enhance a tale of adventure. But the one thing that consistently works against every part is time. I've already mentioned how rough around the edges the character models are, but some dungeons can feel like a slog to get through, namely City in the Sky. While I love the OST for Twilight Princess, this was the last game to use MIDI compositions, as later entries started using live orchestras, which sound much better. I want to make one thing clear. I enjoy Twilight Princess. I think the game is good fun, but it has its faults. The pacing is inconsistent at times, and the overall length of the game gets tiring. The dungeons, while a highlight of the game, definitely have their low points, and not every dungeon is as enjoyable as each other. The Wolf-Link combat feels unexplored, and not every item feels like a great addition. The character models are showing their age nearly 20 years later, and the realistic art style is not as appealing as it was back in 2006. Yet, I still find things to love about the game. The music is fantastic, the combat is at its fastest, and the story is loaded with exciting moments and great character development. As I mentioned before, there's 3 different versions of Twilight Princess. And while the most obvious one to recommend would be the HD version, I don't feel right pushing it as the definitive version to play. My take is to try each version for yourself and decide from there which one suits you more. I know there's been discussion online for years of Nintendo porting the HD versions of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess to the Switch, but I'd honestly like to see them remake Twilight Princess from the ground up. Redo the character models, add in a proper art style akin to the promotional material, record all the music with an orchestra, expand Wolf-Link's combat abilities, add a way to switch between day and night cycles, redesign certain rooms within some dungeons, and make it run at 60 frames per second. The odds are pretty unlikely, but it wouldn't be out of place in an industry that has been remaking games from the 2000s for the past couple of years. Port wishing aside, Twilight Princess is a great game that unfortunately feels like a game made for fans of the Nintendo 64 entries. In the pursuit of fine-tuning all of the mechanics from Ocarina of Time, the new items and gameplay mechanics don't feel as though they've got enough time to properly stand out. But what it lacks in gameplay, it more than makes up for in story and atmosphere. It's for these reasons that I believe that Twilight Princess is a conflicting successor. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, leaving a like, comment, and sub to the channel is a great way of showing some support. As always, these videos are not possible without some help. Thank you to Cartarian for assisting me with the script writing as per usual. Thank you to Khanage for offering some of his editing techniques to improve the quality of the video. Thank you to Desilent for providing some of the footage seen in the video. Special thank you to SavingTermina for sharing some of his personal Zelda theories with me, as well as providing some insight on the script. Finally, thank you to Ewber for assisting me with the video thumbnails. Apologies for the long wait on this one, life had gotten in the way and I had wanted to work on other projects. But I am hoping to get back into the swing of things with a few ideas I have in mind. If you want to keep up to date with everything that I'm up to, you can find me with the handles on screen. But until next time, take care.